let me show you what we're going to do to check and adjust the valves on my blue W123 behind me. With a flathead screwdriver, we need to get our linkage right here at the cruise control. Be careful with these because you don't want to bend or break any of your linkages. Let's see, we're also going to need to get our linkage off the injection pump. Then we can pull our pin here so that this can slide out eventually. Then our Bowden cable that goes to the transmission also has to go. That has a little plastic thing you can squeeze, pop the Bowden cable out, set that over out of the way. Now I do believe that is pretty much all we need to do. We can remove our 4 bolts and pull our valve cover off. These are a 13 millimeter and they use a small wavy washer under them. These wavy washers end up getting lost very easily, so snag them off with a magnet so that you don't lose those before you reassemble. And over on the left hand side of the car there is a fuel return line here that clips into this linkage, so grab that before you try to remove your valve cover. There we go. Okay. Now, while you've got this valve cover off, it's not a bad idea to clean this up, so I'm going to clean this up real good before we reinstall it. Also, this gasket on here tends to harden up, so mine is still relatively pliable, so we'll probably reuse that. Of course, I've got a chipped corner there. So think about getting a replacement gasket, especially if you haven't done this service in a while, because this hardens up. It's exposed to a lot of heat. The rubber tends to degrade over time. We're really close to having our first cam lobe in the right position. So in order to turn over our engine with the power steering bolt, you need to get a wrench that fits on that bolt. And you may need to, depending on the health of your engine, the tightness of your belt, reach down through here and just pick up on the bottom of this belt as you apply pressure to the wrench. And then the engine will carefully and slowly turn it over until right about there. So our camshaft is just a little past straight vertical on this very first lobe on the cam. So it's just past. If you look at that sight down it, you can kind of see the angle I'm talking about there. This lobe, not quite straight vertical, it's just facing slightly more towards our oiling rail there. So if we look at our chart, that very first valve, number 1 in the sequence, has a black marker here, which indicates that is an exhaust valve. So our exhaust valve gets a 0.35 millimeter feeler gauge, which is equivalent to 0.014 inches. And I have that feeler gauge right here, 0.35. I guess you're not going to be able to see that. You're just going to have to trust me. This is a 0.35 millimeter feeler gauge. It will not go in there at all. So that feeler gauge is, or that adjustment is too tight. So in order to adjust that, we have to come over to this side of the car with our special 14 millimeter bent adjusting wrenches. One of these goes on the bottom, and then one of them goes on the top portion of this. Break this loose, and now our top one is just a lock nut, so we turn the bottom one to make our adjustment and then tighten the top one back down. may need to kind of fiddle and move your wrenches around a little bit. But any adjustment you make, you need to tighten that back up and then check with your feeler gauge and see that's pretty good now. Will go in easily, but it's not loose. If anything, you want these to be a little looser than tight because they wear, they get tight. So we can take our wrenches back off there. We'll move on to our next one in the sequence, so this was number 1. Number 2 is our intake valve on cylinder 3, which if you look down here, you can see the next lobe that's going to be facing straight up is our next one in our sequence. That makes it easy. We just did this one. This one's going to be next. So we need to rotate our engine until that is facing straight up or a little past. So let's do that. Looking at our chart, or if you don't have a chart printed out, you can calculate which of these is which based on which manifold goes to which lobe. So that first one was an exhaust, then there's 2 intakes, then an exhaust, or then 2 exhausts, then an intake. So this one is an intake valve, which means we don't use the 0.35, we use the 0.1 millimeter feeler gauge. So let's see how tight this one is. That one is fine. It fits in there, not too loose, but leaves a little oil film on there. So that valve is A-okay. We don't need to adjust that one. We'll just move on to our next one in the sequence, which is going to be this valve, because it's the next one that's going to come up. It's a straight vertical. So let's rotate the engine some more.
Keep in mind that using a 27mm socket on the crankshaft is a perfectly viable option. I just find it a little bit easier to use the power steering pulley so that then I can see where the camshaft is turning and which valve will be next on the list to adjust.
See, that does not easily slide in there. That's very tight. It does fit, but it should slide right in there. Yeah, that's nice now. Feeler gauge fits in nice. Leaves just a little drizzle of oil on there. So we're good on that one. On to the next.
As they say on the back of a shampoo bottle, lather, rinse, and repeat. This is a bit of a tedious project as you need to rotate each valve, check it, adjust it if necessary, and then rotate and check your next valve. Now, as you're doing this, what you're looking for is that feeler gauge slips in nice and easily, but it wipes the oil off. See how it's wiped that oil film off? That's about right. Not too tight, not too loose. That's what we're looking for. Now, after we've checked all 10 valves on a 5-cylinder or all 8 valves on a 4-cylinder, and keep in mind there are some differences in the specifications, we can put our valve cover back on, hook up all our linkages, reconnect everything, and hopefully have a smoother, better running, more efficient engine.
Well, there you have it. Now my W123's valves are ready to go for another 15,000 miles, or probably a little bit more. But my maintenance habits aside, You know what you need to do, whether you've got an OM616, 617, NA turbo. It's the same procedure, just slightly different specifications if you have a non-turboed engine. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.